Hi spooky friends! Today I will be sharing with you a list of murder mysteries perfect to enjoy by a crackling fire. Let's get started. Spooky and very cozy friends. My name is Lexi and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be really fun because I am obsessed with cozy mysteries. This obsession, I'm gonna be honest, is like relatively new. There have been quite a few videos that I have consumed that have like sparked this interest, like Kayla's cozy mystery vlog and also like Darling Desi's recommendation video. Also, I love Meg with books. She does quite a few like cozy mystery series and videos as well. I will link all of these people down below. And I've been interested in cozy mysteries, but I've been more interested in the cozy mystery genre for like movies and television series. I think this first was sparked by Knives Out, and then this totally became solidified from Only Murders in the Building. And it sounds weird to say that murder is cozy, but the thing that makes this super cozy is that in almost all of these settings, these stories take place in the colder winter and autumn months. And also it's a very big thing to have these stories take place in more atmospheric settings like bookshops and bakeries and libraries and old mansions. Who doesn't want to read about a creepy old mansion, you know? And in my opinion, there is no better time to reach for a cozy mystery than in the chillier autumn and winter months. So these are all books, movies, and television series that you can watch or you can read by a crackling fire, maybe with something hot in your hands like a cup of tea or coffee, and they're just going to give you those super warm and cozy vibes. And I am just so excited to get started. So let's go ahead and start with movies and television series. So my first recommendation is going to be for Only Murders in the Building, and this is currently streaming on Hulu, and there are 2 seasons out. This is one of the most wholesome and charming shows I've ever had the pleasure of watching. If you are looking for that perfect show to give you those cozy and warm vibes, this is it, my friends, okay? The show is following Mabel, Charles, and also Oliver, who are all strangers who live in this very beautiful apartment building in Manhattan in New York. And the first season actually does take place in the fall. So in the very first season, all 3 of these people actually meet when their apartment is evacuated because there is a death that happens in the building. The police actually classify this as like an unaliving incident, if you know what I'm saying. However, Mabel and Oliver and Charles are convinced that actually this was a murder. And so the 3 of them decide to try to crack the case themselves, and in the process they also start a podcast. I love the chemistry between Steve Martin and Martin Schwartz and also Selena Gomez. I just feel like they seem like real life friends, and that really translates well, I think, in this television series. It's so wholesome and so well thought out. I also loved the plot twists in this one, but I also really loved how, as cozy and like mysterious as it seemed, it was also really funny. Next up is going to be Knives Out. I am obsessed with Knives Out, and in fact, anytime I see a book that has been compared to Knives Out, it's like an automatic buy at this point. Knives Out is a classic whodunit movie, and we're following a family who is extremely wealthy, and they're all gathered together when their father and grandfather passes away. But right before the reading of the will, a detective comes and he is convinced that somebody actually tried to kill the grandfather slash father, so he thinks that this is not a normal death, but it is in fact a murder. And it's amazing because now we get to see everyone is turning on each other, knives are out. I love a drama where it's like all of these people are trying to fight for the will or for something that has been left for them. I think it's so much fun. I love the cinematography of this as well. This all takes place again in the autumn time, so you're going to get those cozy autumn feels with like the background and the crunching of the leaves and this really spooky kind of creepy old mansion. I thought this was fantastic. The acting in it is amazing, and the writing in it is also spectacular. Next up is Enola Holmes. This is actually from the perspective of Sherlock Holmes' little sister, Enola. And she has been raised by her mother to be independent and clever and witty at a time when women weren't really given the opportunity to get a proper education. And so we, right off the bat, love her character because she's super independent and very smart. But then one day something tragic really happens and her mom actually disappears. And Enola is convinced that her mom's disappearance is actually bigger than the police are letting on, and she decides to go and search for her mom and crack this case for herself. Along the way, she actually also gets entangled with a little bit of a love interest who she ends up helping as well, and it's just so cute. I love Mindy Bobby Brown. Like, the girl can absolutely do no wrong, and her acting in this is phenomenal. But second of all, everything about it was just so well done. The costumes and the music, the cinematography, all of the different shots, the whole thing feels so immersive. I think it's kind of like impossible to not love this movie, in my opinion. And it really does feel perfect for the autumn season as well. The whole thing really feels like the perfect cozy mystery to watch on a cold autumn day. Next up, we have to talk about Clue, the whodunit of my freaking childhood. So this is a comedy. It's a classic whodunit, but it's also a comedy. And we are following a group of strangers who are all invited one night by a Mr. Body. And when they get there, Mr. Body has been murdered. And now they all have to figure out who amongst them is the killer of Mr. Body. Also, if you have not played this as a board game, you're missing out, my friend. You are missing out. What sets this movie apart, in my opinion, is how freaking funny this is. This is a theme that you're probably going to see in a lot of the murder mysteries that I have on this list. I prefer murder mysteries with a little bit of comedy because I feel like it breaks up some of the more spookier elements. And this is no exception, because even though it's a little tiny bit scary, it's just so wildly funny that you will be laughing the entire time you're watching this. Okay, next up is a television series that I have recently discovered. I think it actually just came out this year, and it is called The After Party. Out of all of the cozy mysteries on this list, this one by far is the funniest. I've just started watching this series, but the first episode made me laugh so much that literally like my sides were hurting. So this particular one is following a group of people who are all going back to their high school reunion, and they're all going back to their high school reunion for different reasons. Some want to find love, some possibly might want revenge. While they are there, they are all invited back to this celebrity's house for an after party. So this guy was actually in their graduating class, and he invites like a selected handful of them back to his house for a party. And in the middle of the night, he ends up dead. A detective is called in because they think that he was murdered. Every single episode actually follows a different person's perspective, and everyone has interpreted the night differently. The detective actually only has one night to solve this because she isn't wanted on the case. And so she gets one night to try to figure it out to prove to her boss that she can crack cases. It's amazing. The next one is a little bit more serious, but it's still a little bit cheeky, and that is Why Didn't They Ask Evans? So Why Didn't They Ask Evans is a limited mini series, and it's inspired by Agatha Christie's book, Why Didn't They Ask Evans? The story takes place in the 1930s, and we are following Bobby Jones, who I think is like caddying when he suddenly hears a man scream. He goes over to the cliffs and he finds that this man has fallen to his death, or almost to his death. And then when he goes down to see if he's okay, this man says, "Why didn't they ask about Evans?" And then he dies. Bobby is actually convinced that this man was murdered, that it was not just like a random act. And so he starts to try to look more into the case and crack it himself with his friend Frankie. I love this so much. I feel like the acting in it is so freaking good, and it was such a well-written screenplay. The very first episode completely had me hooked. So if you're looking for a cozy mystery that's maybe a little bit more serious and a more traditional whodunit, this might be the one for you. The next one is called Gosford Park, and you can actually rent this from Amazon Prime, which is what I did. So this particular one is for all of the people who love Downton Abbey. And actually this was written by someone named Fellows, and Fellows is the person who wrote Downton Abbey. And Downton Abbey was originally meant to be a spin-off of this particular show, but then it turned out to be like its own separate thing. There are all of these very, very wealthy English people who have been invited to a shooting party in the English countryside, and we're following their servants, and then we're also following like all of their interactions. And while they are staying at this house, one of them is murdered. And so they're trying to figure out exactly what happened and who killed who. But I have to be honest, out of all of the different murder mysteries on this list, this is the one that has way more in it than just the murder murder mystery. There are so many different subplots that are happening between all of the different characters. So this is really the perfect movie, I think, for someone who is interested maybe in murder mystery, but is more interested in character study. If you love drama, like this is your okay? And I think that is it. So now that we've covered movies and television series, let's go ahead and move on to cozy books. The first one I have here is Green Glass House, and this is by Kate Milford. So this cozy mystery takes place more around Christmas time rather than autumn. I feel like it would be a really great transitional book, but if you are in the mood for something that's a little bit more snowy, you might want to pick this one up. This is a middle grade, and we are following Milo, and Milo lives with his parents in what is called a smuggler's inn. So his parents run this little bed and breakfast basically, but it's only open to thieves. And one night on Christmas Eve, when they are not expecting any company, the entire hotel is booked room by room as a group of strangers comes and tries to stay here. However, it seems like the strangers all seem to know each other. And so Milo is trying to figure out how they know each other and what their stories are and what exactly they want with Green Glass House. There are so many things in here that are described that just make you feel like you want to sit by a crackling fire. The hot chocolate, the stories told at night, the snowed in nights. It's absolutely one of my very favorite cozy mysteries, and I could not recommend this more. Next up is a book that I don't think would be considered a traditional cozy mystery, but it definitely deserves to be on this list, and that is Finley Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano. This book is so hilarious, and if we are learning anything from this list, it's that I love a funny mystery. We're following Finley, and Finley is a struggling single mom, and she's actually also a writer, and she writes like thrillers and mystery books. She ends up meeting with her editor at a Panera, and while they are there, she's explaining how she's going to kill off her main character. When her editor leaves though, she finds a note in her purse, and the note is saying, "Hi, can you please kill my husband for me?" And the person who wrote it mistook Finley for a hit woman, which is kind of like where our story starts. Now that itself doesn't really sound like a mystery, it sounds more like a thriller, and you learn more of the mystery as you read, so I don't really want to give too much away, but basically the mystery comes from finding out who this person is and why this woman wants her husband to be killed off. And it's really interesting because as Finley is cracking a case, she's actually building her own. So she has to cover up her tracks for everything that she's doing while also trying to figure out who all of these different people are, and it's a really fun time. I feel like this is such a fun cozy mystery. It's a little bit more action-packed than most other mysteries on this list, but I would still consider this to be a cozy mystery and perfect for the autumn season. Next up, I am recommending The Queen of Whodunits. That's right, Agatha Christie. I've got two of her books here. I have just started reading Agatha Christie, and I love her writing so much. The two that I have personally read are Murder on the Orient Express, and then also And Then There Were None. I feel like this is probably the more cozy out of the two. This one is about a group of people who are on a train and somebody is murdered, and there is a detective named Detective Poirot, and he has to figure out who killed who on the train. And then this particular one is about a group of strangers who are all invited to an island, and one by one they are getting murdered, and so they have to figure out who amongst them is the killer. The next one I have here is The Inheritance Games, and this is by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. And this one is YA. I think it's the only YA on this list. So I feel like this is the perfect recommendation if you are looking for something that's a little lighter in the cozy mystery and a little more on the potential for romance. We're following Avery, and Avery has just been invited to listen to the will reading of this eccentric billionaire who has just passed away in Texas. His entire family is not going to inherit any of the money, and she is going to inherit everything, but only if she can stay at his mansion for 1 full year. And while she is there, his family is also there, and they are not very happy with her. You definitely get those Knives Out vibes from the synopsis, but again, I feel like the focus is a little bit more on Avery and her relationship with the two younger, like, grandsons of this person. So if that is your vibe and the synopsis sounds really good, you might want to check this out. I did enjoy this book. I feel like I kind of wish it was a little bit more heavy on the mystery elements, but I do still think that the vibes for this are perfect if you are looking for a cozy mystery for the autumn season. The next stack of books that I have here are all books that I have not read, so they are my cozy murder mysteries that I'm excited to read and that I want to share with you, but I myself have not read these yet. The first one is going to be The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart White. This is a book that has been recommended to me so many different times, and the synopsis for this one sounds so unique. We're following a detective, and the detective is trying to figure out who killed Evelyn Hardcastle. But here's where it gets really interesting. They can actually wake up as a different person every single time. So we're following like a group of people who were all there and present for Evelyn Hardcastle's death or like murder. This detective actually wakes up in the body of every single person who was present the day that the murder happened, and that's how they're trying to figure out who killed Evelyn Hardcastle. So there are some speculative elements in here which I'm really excited about. I've heard excellent things about this book, and I think it's gonna be really good. This is probably like my #1 murder mystery that I really want to get to. So yeah, if you like some speculative elements in your murder mysteries, you might want to try this one. The next one is a book that I have put on so many different lists and TBRs, and I will be reading it this September, October, or November. And that is The Scandalous Sisterhood of Prickwillow Place, and this is by Julie Berry. This is a middle grade. We're following a group of girls who all go to this boarding school, and one day their headmistress falls down dead at the breakfast table. But the girls don't actually want to be sent back to their homes, and so they decide to not tell the police right away and instead try to crack the case themselves. I love the vibes from this so much. I feel like this is a little bit like dark academia because it's taking place in a boarding school. I love that all of these girls are going to be banding together to try to figure out who murdered their headmistress. The vibes in this also feel perfect for this time of year. I know that there's going to be a lot of cozy moments in here, so I'm really excited to get to this one. Next up, I have two little books. This one is called Crime and Poetry, and this is by Amanda Flower. And then this one is In the Company of Witches by Oralee Wallace. So In the Company of Witches really reminds me of Practical Magic. Our main protagonist, Bryn, is a person who has just moved in with her aunts after her husband has passed away. And her aunts run this little cozy bed and breakfast. And what people don't know is that Bryn and her two aunts are all witches, and they actually use magic to kind of help them run this in. One night, however, there is a very grumpy guest named Constance, and she is murdered, and now the police think that Bryn's aunts are the ones who did it, and Bryn has to crack the case to clear her aunts' names. I've started to read this one, and it is so cozy. This is a book for people who really love those little detail elements of like scones being cooked and like baked goods and crackling fires and a little bit of magic. So if that is your vibe, I really recommend this one. It feels so cozy and so perfect for autumn. It also has a really high ratings right now on Goodreads. I think it's like at a 4.1, which to me says that it's a really good book. And for this one, I'm gonna go ahead and read the back. So it says, rushing home to sit by her ailing grandmother's bedside, Violet Waverly is shocked to find Grandma Daisy the picture of perfect health. Violet doesn't need to read between the lines. Her grandma wants Violet back home and working in her magical store, Charming Books. It's where the perfect books tend to fly off the shelf and pick you. Violet has every intention of hightailing it back to Chicago, but then a dead man is discovered clutching a volume of Emily Dickinson's poems from Grandma Daisy's shop. The victim is Benedict, who recently put Grandma Daisy in his will, making her a prime suspect. Now with the help of a tuxedo cat named Emerson, Violet will have to help find a killer to keep Grandma from getting booked for good. The next book is called The Secret Book and Scone Society, and this is by Ellery Adams. This book is following Nora, and Nora lives in a place called Miracle Springs, and people actually flock to Miracle Springs, I think to like mend their broken hearts and to kind of like find comfort. And if they can't somehow cheer themselves up, they go to her bookshop where they can get something called a comfort scone, and then Nora will actually find them the perfect book. One day, a businessman is traveling and he actually asks to book an appointment with Nora. However, before the appointment can actually take place, he is found dead. Nora is completely shocked by this and she decides to actually start her own secret society called the Secret Book and Scone Society, where people who have regularly shopped with her kind of get together and they try to like figure out what has happened and solve this case together. But to get into this group, they have to divulge their deepest, darkest secrets. I love this so much. First of all, I love secret societies. I love that this is going to be like a cozy secret society. I love that we're going to be following a group of friends, and I love the setting of like this magical little bookstore with like comfort scones. This has so much potential in my opinion. I don't know, I just think it's gonna be really, really perfect for the autumnal season. The next book is The Thursday Murder Club, and this is by Richard Osman. This is a book that I have talked about quite a bit on my channel. This is one of the books that I definitely want to read this upcoming autumn season. We're following a group of people, men and women, who all live in this retirement home, and they are obsessed with like true crime and crime podcasts. They enjoy talking about unsolved murder mysteries and trying to crack cases together. When one day there is actually a person who has been murdered, I think right outside of their retirement home, and when the police deem that it was not a murder, they decide to crack the case in real life. I love that we're following a group of friends. I love that this is a murder that kind of conveniently just took place outside of their retirement home. I think this is gonna be really, really great. And I've honestly heard excellent things about this book. And last but not least, we've got A Shady Hallow, and this is by Juno Black. This book literally sounds like the most perfect cozy murder mystery for this time of year because we are literally following a woodland creature's perspective. That's right, the detective in this is a fox. We're following Vera the vixen, who lives in this very, very quaint little woodland creature town, I guess, and somebody that she knows ends up murdered, and so she tries to crack the case. Really, I'm gonna be honest with you, I picked it up because the detective was a fox. I don't feel like I need to explain myself. Who wouldn't want to read a fox detective? I loved the mouse detectives, so I'm sure I will love a fox detective. And you guys, I think that's it. Those are all of my cozy murder mystery recommendations. Hopefully you have found a couple of things that sound good to watch or good to read. And if you have any recommendations for me, please leave them down below in the comments. And if you have made it to this part of the video, please leave me the coffee emoji, because I feel like nothing is as cozy as murder mysteries and some coffee. Thank you all so much for watching. I love you guys with all of my heart, and until next time, book lovers, keep your head in the clouds and your heart in a book, and I will speak to you very soon. Stay spooky.